Yeah, just before I introduce Louise, I'll quickly go through the agenda. So, as I've mentioned, Louise will be giving a bit of an overview of HNES, the scheme so far, how much funding we have awarded under the scheme, what projects we've funded, and sort of the milestones we've hit so far. Then we'll be hearing from Chris from Seascape Management, who provide a bit of a story about the banks project that we funded under a previous round and how that's getting on. And then we'll hear from Ben Parker at the University of Liverpool, who provide an update on their project. And then Katie from our team, who will sort of round us off by giving a bit of a sort of a wrap up in terms of how you can apply for HSS funding if you're on this webinar and looking to apply for a project yourself, whether that be capital or revenue. And then we'll have a bit of a Q&A function at the end if there are any other questions for any of the team or any of our speakers as well. So without further ado, I will hand straight over to Louise.
Thank you very much, Michael. Hi, everyone. So yeah, I just wanted to give a bit of context about the heat network efficiency scheme and what sort of funding we've awarded to date. So next slide, please. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with the aims and objectives of the scheme, but just to refresh your memory, we have three aims. The first one is about reducing carbon emissions by making heat networks more efficient. So obviously, if you're using more energy than you need to get the heat to the dwellings or the buildings, then there's more carbon being produced as a result of that as well. So I want to make sure we're not wasting carbon. The second is around reducing customer detriment to improve consumer confidence. So obviously, if we're using more energy, people are potentially paying more than they need to for the energy and the heat in their homes. So we want to make sure that people are having good experiences on heat networks, not feeling disadvantaged. So again, want to improve people's confidence in having a heat network. And the third one is looking at preparing the heat network market for sector regulation and technical standards. So we've now got a regulator in place. So Ofgem is now the regulator for the heat network sector. There will be technical standards coming into force in the future. So you might be aware of the Heat Network Technical Assurance Scheme. So that will require heat networks to operate, still to be designed and developed to a certain standard, but then existing heat networks to operate to a certain standard as well. So we would want to make sure that existing heat networks are being able to comply with those requirements. Okay, so in terms of what HNES has achieved so far, these figures are slightly lower than I was expecting to see. So we have actually this afternoon issued a press release for our latest round of funding for round 9. So these figures are actually up to round 8, but hot off the press, I can tell you the updated stats. So we've actually now funded 397 heat network projects, a total of 65.6 million, and over 70,000 residents benefiting. So obviously a lot of money going out when we're really pleased that so many heat networks are able to benefit from the funding that we have. If we go to the next slide. So this just kind of shows you whereabouts in England and Wales the funded projects have been. So good to see a good spread across all regions of the two countries. Obviously, this webinar is focusing on the northwest region. So we've got a few bits of information about that region specifically in a coming up slide. But in terms of things that we are funding from a capital perspective, so things like upgrading pipework, replacing pipework, improving or installing in some cases, or insulation on those pipes, updating controls, so things like BMS, or just controls within the energy sensor, controls also within dwellings, so things like TRVs as well. Replacing HRUs, so that could be replacing, that can be recommissioning, things around improving water quality, and also to reduce leaks. We've also looked at things like closing bypasses, things like replacing pumps, so a wide variety of different things across all the way through from the energy centre through to sort of primary, secondary and tertiary networks. So like I say, we're obviously focusing today on the Northwest region. So within that region, we've funded 61 heat network projects so far, 42 revenue and 19 capital. So revenue studies look at helping networks understand what's happening with their network, how well is it performing now, how can it be improved, and giving recommendations for measures that can be installed. And then capital projects are actually going and making those measures and installing those measures and improving the network. You don't have to have done a revenue study to do a capital application. So these aren't necessarily moving through, they can be standalone capital projects. And yeah, £7.76 million awarded to the Northwest region. And obviously you'll hear about some of the projects shortly. So as I said, hot off the press at I think 2 o'clock this afternoon, we released our press release for round 9. There's a link at the bottom here to that press release. You'll also be able to, and I think they've just put it in the chat as well, brilliant. You'll also be able to see all previous press releases as well on our website. So if you want to find out more about some of the other projects that have been funded, you can check out the press releases there. But yeah, we're pleased to announce another 8.4 million has been awarded to 69 heat networks across both capital and revenue projects. So we've got a few pictures here of some of the projects that were funded. We've got Chichester University. This is Stockport, a Stockport Borough Council housing block. So yeah, again, have a look at the press release if you want to find out more about what's been recently awarded. But I think that's probably enough for me. And I'm going to hand over to Chris, who's going to talk to you about his funded project, which is the banks.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the Operations Director for Seascape Management Limited. And we in January 2024, we completed a major heating system overhaul in both the properties we manage. Next slide. And sorry, what? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, great. So, I'm going to walk you through how we turned what was a very significant expenditure. We're around about £500,000 a year turnover residential management company for 148 apartments across 2 buildings. We'd already done the heating system in one of our buildings prior to us being aware that grants were available. That was a downside in one way, but in another way it gave us some very useful information in order to get the funding for the banks. So the two buildings, the channel and the banks. Next slide. The problem we had in both buildings, the systems were around about 40 or 50 years old, very inefficient, forever breaking down. And we needed to obviously upgrade them, and it was a clear-cut case of we couldn't actually do partial replacement. They were beyond economical repair, and so therefore when we were talking to our leaseholders, who are shareholders of the company as well, it's a leaseholder owned, they are leaseholder owned apartments. It was clear that we needed to go for a new system. This was also the time when the gas prices were absolutely rocketing due to the various issues, and it was felt that we needed to do it sooner rather than later, so that the money could be invested in new systems and not in the profits of gas companies. So next slide. Our solution was to invest in a new highly efficient condensing system, and it's got an impressive 95.6% efficiency, which was a massive leap from the old system, which had sub 60%. but also we're looking at this obviously from our perspective. That was the key thing for us to be able to provide a good service for our leaseholders, a reliable and cost-effective service, but also as well to look at it from the point of view of our carbon emissions. We wanted to get the best we can. We looked at other options, heat pumps, etc., ground source, but when we had an independent assessment done, and it was because of the situation of where we were, etc., it was felt that an efficient gas-based system was the best way forward. That study that was done was very helpful in us applying for the grants, because it showed that we had looked at other options before we went down the route of gas powered. As part of the looking at the new system as well, and I would say this is a key thing for people going forward. Look at the wider opportunities. So we've got 2 buildings, and previously each building has 2 wings, and each wing had its own boiler room. We knew that from the previous system, which was actually an oil-based boiler, which was outside of the 2 buildings, that there was pipework at least between each of the 2 wings. We then talked to our installer, who when we thought about the idea of actually moving to 1 boiler room for each building and using the pipework that linked the two wings. They looked into it, checked it through, and said yes, that was possible. That work was done in the channel, so was pre grant application. So not everyone's going to be in the position of having all that data for their grant application, but then we could demonstrate that not only would we be saving in terms of efficiency on that side, but straight away there was going to be around about £10,000 a year saving in our standing charges, because again, that was a thing that was moving then, that standing charges were increasing significantly. So next slide. So yeah, we issued our Section 20 notice for both processes in 2022, and then the HNES grant application was done, as I say, after the installation in the channel, because when we did the Section 20 notice, we weren't aware that grants were available. Once we found that out, we started the process, but we didn't want to hold up the installation of the channel, because, as I say, gas prices were going up. Well, at the end of September of 2023, our gas prices increased significantly. So phase 1 of the installation of the channel went live on June the 6th, 2023. Phase 2, the banks, in January 2024. So we were quite rapid with the next phase, because we'd done so much work on the channel, knew a lot of the issues that we might have, and were able to deal with them. So there, slide 7. Next slide, sorry. Oh, sorry, next slide again, sorry. Right, benefits for the residents. So these figures are over from 2021 right through to 2025, and you can see there's been a significant reduction in our consumption. There hasn't been quite as much in terms of cost, obviously, because the prices increased so significantly. Our rate per kilowatt hour rose from 2.8 pence per kilowatt hour to 7.29%, so a massive 150% increase. But because we were able to actually keep the consumption down, we've been able to achieve those benefits for our residents. Next slide. So getting the sorry, next slide again. I do apologise. Sorry. Yeah. So in summary, we were successful in getting the HNES grants, which was amounted to £28,500. So reduced the overall cost across both systems to just over £260,000. That was a major sort of help from our point of view in terms of the payback on this and the cost for our residents, and also allowed us some headroom to do some other work, which was around about installing solar in the channel, which is nothing to do with this grant, but basically it gave us headroom, and we are now reducing our costs for electricity as well on that one. So yeah, that's all from us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. That was really interesting, and yeah, really good to see that you've got some real positive benefits for your residents. So yeah, really good. Thank you very much for your presentation. So I'm now going to hand over to Ben from the University of Liverpool.
Yeah, afternoon everybody. Ben Parker here from University of Liverpool. So I just want to talk about our funded heat network project for heat meters on campus. So next slide, please. So just a little background about University of Liverpool. We are a large university, so about 30,000 students, just under 8,000 staff, and we're a research university as well. So that means we're quite intensive in terms of energy use. So across our 4 campuses, we're using around £16 million worth of energy every year. Next slide. So we've got quite a history of heat networks on main campus, which is what we're concentrating on today. So we've had a heat network in the 1960s that fed from 3 separate boiler houses, but a decision was made in 2009 to centralise that to one energy centre that houses 3 12-megawatt boilers and a 3.4 megawatt Jan combined heat and power engine. So that was really successful for us. Next slide. And because of the success of that original energy centre, we decided to convert a Victorian boiler house for the old Liverpool Infirmary into a further energy centre, installing 2 more combined heat and power engines in there. So we felt there was still headroom for us to generate more electricity ourselves. So we got the funding and did Energy Centre 2. Next slide. So with those 3 CHP engines, we're generating about 7.4 megawatts, and that serves around 48 substations on campus. So it's been a real benefit for the university in terms of providing up to 90% of our electricity needs. And one of the things we've had to consider in terms of heat network is the system is led by electrical demand. So in the summer, when we don't need as much heat, some of that waste heat that's generated as part of electricity generation is actually disposed of in the system through dump radiators. Next slide. And so the network itself, like I said previously, we've got 3 12-megawatt gas boilers to give us good resilience for the network. We capture the waste heat from the CHP exhaust and the jacket water, and that goes into the network system. And so all in all, we've got about 5.5 kilometres of pipe work buried under the campus, and they're transferred into the buildings on campus through plate heat exchangers in our plant rooms. So here's just like a map just to show you how the extent of the network covered on main campus. So you can see for the map on the left-hand side, and then the right-hand side is a plan of where the network is covered in that area. So we've got about 80 buildings. I think it's about 95% of buildings on main campus covered by it. So in terms of the benefits of CHP, when we've run the figures, we realised we were saving about 7,000 tonnes of CO2 each year just by the efficiencies of generating our own heat, our own power, sorry, and capturing the waste heat. And also the cost, 20% cheaper to generate our own electricity and capture that waste heat. A bit of a no-brainer, obviously quite a bit of investment to get it up and running, but we've seen, savings year on year for the past 15 years. Next slide. Yeah, so why do we want to improve heat metering coverage? I think one of the things on the university that hasn't been the drivers to keep up sort of regular, accurate heat meters. Obviously, when you're a supplier, electricity supplier, or a gas supply, there's a legal requirement to keep that meter maintained and up to date and accurate. Was on your own heat network, not necessarily those drivers. So we knew that coverage was patchy. We wanted to improve that. We wanted to improve it to help identify efficiencies in the system, any high returns, things like heat losses that we're finding, flow imbalances. We also wanted to use that extra information really to provide evidence for investment. So if we could see a heat plate exchanger wasn't working, taking the heat, we'd have some good evidence to suggest that would need to be replaced. And when we're applying for capital funding, we were able to demonstrate that. Because we're managing our own sort of power stations effectively, we've also got a big compliance burden in terms of providing accurate information to the likes of the Environment Agency, UK ETS. So for our compliance and also for monitoring how we're doing on our net zero targets, it's also been important. And I think one of the things that Louise mentioned earlier was about sort of the standards for networks in terms of monitoring and data. And, we've also got the HNES guidance, which gives us a lot of information about what the kind of data coverage should look like, but also getting ready for the heat network technical assurance scheme is important as well. Obviously it won't be as existing networks initially, but that is coming in, so we're trying to prepare ourselves for that. And I think not necessarily units universities, but it's one of them things. We do get a lot of requests with data from academics and students about what's happening in their buildings as well. So we wanted to improve that heat metering coverage, so we were able to do things like dashboards at building level to inform people about what's being used, and also to help engage people to save energy. Next slide. So what did we actually apply for? So we applied for 6 heat meters in buildings that didn't currently have good metering coverage and no data. Total cost of the project was 147,000, just shy of 148,000. And the total amount we got awarded by HNES for that was 72,000, so roughly half of that cost. And we match funded the rest of the costs. So in terms of the time taken, it was about 9 months. Started in November 23, completed in July 24. And I think some of the hold that we had with that was sort of internally making sure we had that funding available. There was a few different boards that it had to go to, which held it up slightly. So in terms of what we specified, obviously heat meters very different to your traditional gas and electric meters. We'd already had Endress&Hauser meters on campus. We found that they were really good. So the actual heat meters themselves are sort of MID compliant, that level of accuracy. Obviously, when you're doing heat meters, it is the 3 elements. It is the meter itself, the thermometer to measure the temperatures, and the flow meters. And what we found was really good about using Endress&Hauser was they had comprehensive maintenance and calibration. So every year they come and do that. And we can also monitor all the instruments through Natillion portal, so we can see when a meter is becoming obsolete or it needs updated calibration. So keeping on top really of the meters and making sure that they're all accurate and working properly. Next slide. Right, so we're coming into the pictures of some of the installations themselves. A lot of challenges really in terms of existing plant rooms. There's a lot of different types of buildings on campus: modern buildings, historic buildings, listed buildings. This is one of our listed buildings, Victoria Gallery, and we did struggle finding the correct place for the flow meter on this. The kind of challenges you're looking at really are, enough run of a pipe, length of pipe, so you're making sure it's not near a bend, etc., and being affected by eddy currents. So that was one of the ones for Victoria Gallery. Next slide. Mechanical engineering was another challenge, and this is, the left-hand picture is quite common in some of the plant rooms I'm working with. Very congested, not a lot of space for putting in, new meters and things like that. A lot of maybe outdated equipment that has been replaced over the years, but the equipment hasn't been removed. So we did manage to find a point, and I think it's obviously locating the meter at a place that is able to go up and read it manually, for validation purposes and things like that. Next slide. So some more of the challenges are that a lot of the flow meters and temperature probes that we put in are at quite high level in some of the plant rooms. You can see that picture on the right hand side. It's like spaghetti junction in there. One of the things we have to be very careful of is making sure we have got the right pipe. We're isolating the right area where that heat is entering next to the building, where the heat plate exchanger is, making sure that it's in the right position. So a lot of looking at plans and schematics beforehand to identify that was a challenge in itself. Next slide. So mathematical science, there was already a heat meter in there. You can see on the left-hand picture, it was defunct. It was actually in the wrong place. So we found the area ringed on the right-hand side to replace that. But again, very high up. And so if we go to the next slide, we can see that although the flow meter and the thermometer is high up, we managed to locate the heat meter itself in terms of the readouts at a low level where it can be read. Next one. Chemistry was a very tight plant room. Again, we had very short runs of pipe in there, but managed to get one that was just the right size for us. It was difficult to locate, so in terms of maintenance, quite a difficult one. But the meter is in a location where we can actually read it, which was great. And Roxby was our final one. Again, a real congested plant room. The challenge in this one was it's actually a node building, so it wasn't just about measuring the heat that was coming into this building. This building also acts as a kind of substation for sending out to another couple of legs of the campus. So we wanted to monitor all three of them. So again, quite an expensive procedure to get three in, but we thought it was beneficial to not just allow us to see this building, but to allow us to see what was happening beyond this building as well. So yeah, challenges in installing the meters. I've covered a few of them in those slides. Obviously, they are more complex than traditional gas and electricity meters, so a lot of planning needs to go in about where they're going to be located, and that is sometimes to do with making sure you're measuring the correct pipe that has got that building level heat in it. Like I said, having a suitable run of pipe and making sure it's a required length can be a challenge. Also getting power to the meter as well. You need to look at your schematics for your electricity to see how you can power that meter. Have you got a supply nearby you can tap into? And in terms of the data capture, we were doing it through our BEMS system. So when we were looking at doing the planning, we wanted to see what local JACEs were in those plant rooms to connect to. So then we could send it to our BEMS system and then send it to our energy management database. But one of the things that we found, unfortunately, because we've had to put in so many high-level heat meters in terms of high level in the plant room, the annual maintenance costs did increase quite a bit because each year we have to erect scaffolding to get those meters to be maintained and calibrated. And also, like I said in some of those other slides, making sure the meter's accessible for manual reads, just to have that extra validation. And the final point is, I think it's common for any kind of works in old buildings and plant rooms, this is the asbestos angle, things like lagging, meter boards, all that kind of stuff. So we had a good review of our asbestos register before sort of embarking on the project as well. So next slide. So yeah, it has given us really good improved data and visibility, particularly the ones we've chosen are for a certain leg within the campus that we didn't have much visibility of before. So we put it all into our BEMS system. So all the kind of the boxes you can see in green are all those new meters that we've put in. Next slide. And then we also send that to our energy management database. And because we're getting this good level of accuracy now, this half-hourly data, we can actually look at the heat profiles for the buildings. So this one is a student guild, so it's giving us kind of profile you would expect, really. It's used late into the night for things like concerts, gigs, the bar is there for the students. And that is in contrast to the next slide I'm going to show you with chemistry. So more kind of typical sort of profile for a research building. So still the heating needs to be on in the evening for things like 24-hour experiments and other stuff that's going on there. And again, it's just allowing us to look at these buildings individually and see if there is any issues, in terms of peaks and troughs or patterns that we can look at to analyse and make the system work a bit more efficiently. Next slide. Yeah, so overall the project has been really good, I think. I think, some of the costs for heat meters are quite high compared to traditional metering, but, we thought it was very worthwhile to get ahead of the game in terms of compliance, in terms of the heat meter notifications, the heat network technical assurance scheme. So we've also, on the back of this, recently applied for HNES funding for a revenue fund to have a look at an optimization study. And then once we've done an optimization study, we're looking to use the results from that and the recommendations that come through for a further capital funding project as well. So this, I think, project was originally done in round 2. I think we've just applied for round 10. But you know, it's still on our radar to get this information from potential optimization study and use it to fund further capital works. And final point really is to undertake heat network technical assurance scheme training. We've actually done that recently with BESA. Again, just to get us ahead of the game. Like Louise was saying earlier, these are going to come in for existing networks, and we want to make sure we're prepared for that as well. So that's all from me.
Thank you very much, Ben. That was really interesting as well to see the value of having data and being able to understand how your network is performing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
That's all right. I'm now going to hand over to Katie, who's just going to talk a bit more about the sort of funding available if you're looking to apply in future rounds.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can I move on to the next slide? Thank you. So in terms of what funding available, there are revenue grants and capital grants. On the revenue side, it is the funding that's available is for optimization studies. So that's anything from like doing the procurement or the mobilization of external third-party support to carry them out. This will be a full grant, depending on what you're asking for. So usually the budgets for revenue funding is between £15,000 and £24,000. We do say if it does go above, we'd ask you to provide justification as to why it is the amount that it is, and we might be able to move forward with like a partial grant or something like that. The optimization studies themselves are to assess the whole heat network, so they can identify any of the causes that are causing the suboptimal performance, and within the reports that you will get back from the study, it will show any recommendations, whether it's individual measures or packages of measures that will help improve the heat network in general altogether. Yeah, so the funding that we've received so far was up to £2 million between financial years 23 and 24. Further funding has been provided for the financial years 25-26 up to 26-27. However, it is subject to availability, depending on how many people apply. For example, we're just going through round 10 at the moment, and then we have round 11 coming up next month. So again, it's just take that into consideration, depending on how many applications have been granted funding so far. As for the capital grants, so it's only partial funding. It's up to but not including 50%. With this, you'd have to provide evidence, if you are successful in getting the funding, of any match funding, and you would need to have a sort of signed letter to say that you are able to match fund the grant provided or suggested. The capital grant then is for any of the works or installation of the improvement measures or optimization measures that you're aware of and that you wanted to move forward with to improve the heat network. And for this, there is a larger budget, but it's up to 75 million across financial years 23-24 to 27-28. I would say as well, for the revenue funding, you can only apply for this financial year at the moment. For financial year 26-27 at the moment. So that will be from April next year to March 2027. But capital projects, you can apply up to financial years 27-28. We do understand that the projects can take longer, to install and get the improvement measures sorted. And you can also split your funding across those years, mix it with your match funding, or stagger it how you wish. Again, funding wise for revenue side is subject to availability, but we will keep you aware of that And with the grant funding, please also be aware that if you're applying for funding in a certain financial year, it does need to be spent in that financial year. If not, it is at risk of being like lost. So I would keep that into consideration if when you're applying. Just be aware of that. However, with match funding on the capital side, it can be spent either, like I was saying before, either at the same time or after, as long as the grant amount is spent within the financial year allocated. At the moment, I think that's all I want to say on that. If you can move to the next slide. Thank you. So in terms of who can apply, it's any operators of existing district or communal heat networks. We can't accept any applications for wanting to start or help get a heat network going. But if you've got issues in your existing one, then that'll be eligible. It's only in areas of England and Wales, and in terms of who can apply as well, it's public sectors, private sectors, or any third sector organisations, as well as you can have people apply, such as a legal entity apply on the heat network owner's behalf, but it would need a sign off to make investment decisions if you are going to move forward like that, in terms of who's responsible for the heat network. Do you have any questions? I'll do them at the end, sorry. Next slide. In terms of funding round closing dates, so round 11 opening date is officially the 1st of December, and the last day to request an application form in the portal space is the 23rd of January, so the closing date of the applications is the 6th of February. As for round 12, they will be opening in March and the closing will be in May, but please be aware the last date to request any spaces so we can get everything set up and allocated for you is 2 weeks before the closing date, so I'd keep an eye out. We usually send updated dates within in the mailings that we send out. And for August, the opening date is in August 2026 and it's closing in October 2026. And we do provide guidance for applicants. You can click on the link on the slide there, which we will be providing later. And I think that's everything from me.
Perfect. Thanks, Katie. Do you want to cover this one, or I can do it? I don't mind.
You go for it.
Yeah, so there's just a few links. Again, like I said at the start, we'll be sharing these slides afterwards, so you'll be able to click on these links. But if you do have any questions about the scheme, please feel free to email us at hnes@gemserve.com. As Katie mentioned, if you want to find out more about the scheme and keep up to date with what's going on, we suggest you sign up to our mailing list and you'll get all the latest information on that. There are also some links to some optimization guides and some videos that DESNZ have published. So again, if you're looking to understand how you can improve your heat network, they're a good place to start, as they kind of give good hints and tips if you're starting out on that journey. So yeah, if you do have any questions, please feel free to contact us. And I think we're going to go to a Q&A session. So if anyone wants to ask any questions about the scheme or about any of the projects that you've heard about today, feel free to either type them into the chat, or if you want to come off mute and raise your hand, you can ask them directly as well. I guess I had one question for Ben to start off with. So obviously you've installed the meters now. Have you found anything surprising as a result of them? Have you made any sort of improvements off of the back of the additional data that you've had, or is it a bit too early to tell for the moment?
We did find some issues with when we started to get the data through about how much, like I was saying about some of the buildings weren't taking as much heat as they should do in terms of the heat plate exchanges. So we think there's some issues there in terms of that need cleaning out, and the maintenance for some of them hasn't been quite right. So kind of heat's being delivered to the building, but not being taken by the building, if you get my meaning. And so the building is suffering from a little bit of underheating as well. So it has given us those kind of pointers of where to look at. We are looking at a wider piece in terms of improving our energy management database, so we can do more kind of monthly running reports as to, for anomalies, big changes in data from previous year or previous months. So it's still a bit of an ongoing piece, but slowly, because we're improving the coverage and we're improving our energy management database, that's when I think it's going to be a real benefit, when we can start running some of these monthly and annual reports to really highlight where some of the issues might be on site that the data is pointing to.
Perfect, thank you. And just also a question for Chris. Obviously, you've got residents, you've got leaseholders that you're having to engage with. Are you able to talk a bit about the process you went through in terms of getting residents on board? I'm not sure about how intrusive the works were in terms of people's houses, but yeah, sort of any sort of tips or lessons learned from sort of engaging with residents to make the improvements go more smoothly.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I would say I mentioned in the presentation around about the Section 20 process that we have to go through as a for the leaseholders, but we also this presentation was born out of what was presented to the leaseholders at our annual general meeting before we made the decision to actually change. It was we had really good buy-in from the leaseholders. The system was okay. The heating system prior was not breaking down constantly, but it wasn't ideal. But it was more about the fact that we realized things were going to be, I mean, it would have increased our costs by at least 100% if we hadn't done something about it. So it was very much cost driven from that perspective. In terms of being intrusive, we had a really good contractor. We worked together with them. We managed to run, as we did each building, we were able to run it off the one boiler. We did it, that's why we did most of the work in the summer, so that we could run a particular building off the one boiler while we replaced the new ones. One of the things that we're looking at now, well, there are two things. We will be possibly looking at applying for a grant to look at metering, but the metering would have to be at individual apartment level. Otherwise it would be of no use, because we feel the only way that we're actually going to be able to get further efficiencies is by making sure people realize the heat that they're actually using. Currently, it basically we have to just divide everything excuse me, by 148, because we don't have individual meters in the apartments. That's where we think we could actually make some further efficiencies if we had that information. But also as well, we are also looking about possibly trying to relink the two buildings so that we could possibly run in the summer, run the heating, which is, well, it's not the heating, it's to heat the hot water in the summer just from one building. So that would be something else that we would be looking at trying to do. We're already talking to our heating contractor at the moment about this. So yeah, it's been able to concentrate people's minds, but we really did get very good buy-in from our leaseholders, and they've seen that in the way that their heating costs have, once there was the big jump, they've maintained at a level, and now we're in the situation where we've kept the heating charge more or less the same level as it was, but an element of that is actually going back into the reserves, for us to one, to pay for the money that we took out of the reserves for the new boilers in the first place, but also as well we're cross-subsidising building work that has to go on as well. So there are real benefits, and we make sure that the leaseholders are kept informed about that, because well, because it's right, they're paying.
Yeah, fair.
Or they did pay. Yeah.
Yeah. I should say from an HNES perspective on metering, people will be aware of the regulations, the heat metering, the heat network metering and billing regulations. So if you do have a requirement under those regulations to install meters, sort of a legal requirement, then that wouldn't be eligible for funding under HNES, because it's something that you already have to comply with. If you are exempt, if you have undergone the cost efficiency assessment and it's come out and said that actually it's not cost effective for you to install meters, or if you're going above and beyond the requirements of the HNMBR, then that is something potentially we could look to fund. So again, for anyone considering applying for metering as part of an HNES application, then it's worth making sure that you're not already required to do it from a legal perspective under the metering and billing regulations.
Can I just
yeah,
say that? Yeah, we are under the impression that we don't have to, because we're a communal heating system, but we do realise that we're going to have to actually get that confirmed before we would look at anything. Well, we're going to look at it anyway, but obviously before we applied for any grants, we would do. Yeah.
Perfect. Sounds good. Okay, conscious we're butting up against 4 o'clock. Does anyone else have any questions they want to ask of any of our speakers?
Hi, good evening. My name is Anupam and I'm from Secure Meters. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
hi.
Yeah.
Just a question to Ben and, like to Mark, basically, like it is about, like he said that, like they are in discussion with a heating contractor, basically. So I think as a curiosity, I wanted to know that, like, because when, like such a project happen, like, are you entirely dependent to talk to your contractor, or, like you are open for, like there's a lot of technology available in the market in open space and people can come and, like help you to offer, like innovative solutions actually. So for example, like if I talk about secure meter, we are in a space of electricity and gas and heat metering, smart heat metering solutions. So I heard about, like the provision made in the previous case study, but like there is a possibility when it comes to resident, like you might think for some smart metering solution, like which is in line with the compliance also. Question is this, like there's a lot of technology available in the market space, and what is the way, like where, like supplier like us can even work and collaborate, like with these kind of projects.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, so we do have a lot of people who contact us about different levels of metering and different kind of innovative ways of metering, and I think we've decided to work with Anderson House just because they, they're kind of leading in this sort of instrument area, especially in regards to heat metering. But we do need a lot of different people on site for this work. So we had different people from BEMS systems helping us. So we had Impact for that. We work with a company called FutureServe in terms of the actual kind of project management of it. So there's a lot of expertise we need for this. And yeah, I still think there is, bits in the marketplace for new metering, and I think it's obviously becoming more and more important in terms of compliance and in terms of regulations and also in terms of customers as well. So I don't think there's anything that stops us working with, further companies and things, but obviously we've chosen specifically Anderson House to carry on this relationship because of they're quite a leader in that area as well.
Thank you. We're starting to get a couple of questions in on the chat. So again, conscious that we're at 4 o'clock, but I've answered the first one, which was around, which is from Craig, about would the funds for capital funding be capped for individual schemes or applications? So as Katie said, in the revenue, we've got a budget of £15,000 to £24,000 for capital. There's no minimum. There's a maximum of 10 million grant request, and that would be per application, and an application would be per network. The other question from Tabitha, assuming customers in need are responsible for paying their bills, what is the rough percentage of successful funding applications, either for revenue or capital, where the applications did not have a quantified number of customers in need? I don't know that number off the top of my head, so I wouldn't be able to answer that specifically. We do have one of our objectives is around supporting or reducing customer detriment, and we do look to support heat networks that do have customers in need, so people on low incomes, people maybe in extra care homes. It is an element of the scoring, and like I say, we do want to make sure that particularly those in financially vulnerable situations are not being significantly disadvantaged because their heat network isn't operating properly. But that doesn't necessarily mean that if you don't have customers in need on your network that you wouldn't be able to receive funding. We have funded or heat networks that don't have customers in need. So I don't know the split in terms of who's been received funding and who hasn't from a customer in need perspective. But yeah, it's an element of the scoring, but it's not a mandatory requirement if you were to apply. Thank you. Okay, I think we'll probably leave it there now. So if you do want to hear more about the scheme or you do have any questions, please feel free to contact us. There's links to our LinkedIn and X accounts, and also yeah, if you want to join our mailing list, please let us know. But we will share the slides afterwards and the recordings, so if you want to look back at it, you can do. But now that's all left is just for me to say thank you to Chris and Ben for their time and for sharing their stories and their projects with HNES. And yeah, thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.